It's an invisible art. It's an invisible industry. People just take it for granted.
Even the way that I describe it to people, oh, what do you do? I'm a sign painter. I paint letters on buildings.
I remember going down Beach Boulevard and seeing signs everywhere all of a sudden. You know, it was like this experience where, like, oh my God, I know how to make a living now.
I didn't choose sign painting out. All sign painting chose me. That's the only thing I could do, and I could do whatever the fuck I wanted to do and make a living.
You know, this is what I love, this part right here. I look all over the city. This is my city.
You know, it was a cool way to make money, and next thing I know, I'm in Sausalito, and I spent $1.50 on paint, and I'm making $150, and I'm smoking a J, and you know, this is okay.
Every artist is a character, period.
You know, they were going to tear it down anyway.
On my gravestone, it's going to say, he died for greater opacity.
I'm easily amused, I guess. I liked working with the brush.
It'd be fun having a sign painter like pull over and break our balls about kerning.
The old-timers would always tell us, you realize that you're just painting signs for other sign painters.
There are other options than just a chunk of plastic with some stickers on it.
That was more, my interest was coming up with something that was unique and wasn't just, you know, tick, 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 here you go.
I'm inspired by artists. I'm inspired by art.
Don't you think a sign is something that every person somewhere along the line has tried? I don't care if you just take a piece of typing paper and a magic marker and you're going to make everybody's dabbled in that at one time or another. But we're the ones that just kind of kept on going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I got enough of an ego that tells me that I can do anything I want to do. Sign painting, as we know it here in America, is an American art form. It's a good 150 years old. And it all started when growers and manufacturers started to badge their products. Before that, you know, you went to the general store and you said, I want 5 pounds of flour, and they had a barrel there of flour, and they'd fill it up, a canvas bag with 5 pounds in there. But you didn't know where it came from. I mean, it was just, you know, people would say, gee, you know, that flour I got here the last time, that wasn't as good as the flour I got before. Well, it just came in a barrel. You didn't know. So manufacturers said, geez, we got to sell our product because our product is better than our competitors. They didn't have a big agencies on Madison Avenue and creating advertising campaigns for these companies. And so it was the sign painters that did this.
It started going from an identification, identifying what the building was and what was in it, what they sold, what merchandise it was. And it started slowly turning into an advertising medium. And not only can identify what's in this building, but we can tell the public, we've got better deals than my neighbor, or we've got something you should come and look at it. So it started to evolve itself into not only identification, but an advertising medium. Everything needed to be done by someone who had lettering skills. Who had lettering skills? Your local sign man. That's who had lettering skills.
Nothing more, either that or just take and duct tape it up to the edge here. Whatever it's going to be. With the texture of this, it's not going to be pretty. Yeah, no. I mean, it's going to, like, we're going to put somewhere in the shop.
That's basically
Oh, yeah.
Let's tape this trunk club pattern up on the wall. Then we can figure out exactly if we want to go up, down a little bit or whatever.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then we can figure, once we figure out where that is, and then where we're going to have this, then we can figure our edges. Because I was going to take this just a shade wider.
Oh, perfect.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And we might wind up actually just coming a shade narrower.
Computer, so at least. Yeah. Every time you get one.
Right there?
Yeah, I just want to make it work on it.
I think anytime somebody asks me what I do and I say sign painting is a part of it, I end up having to really kind of explain what that is. I think people don't think of it as something you might do.
When I would talk to people early on about starting a sign museum, a lot of them thought I said science museum. When they come through and they see all the types of materials and all the types of signs, painted, glue chip, gold leafed, I often hear the comment, you know, signs are everywhere, but I never thought that there's actually somebody that has to make those.
In Chicago was known for having these just great looking wall signs all over. And the colors. And it was all started by Beverly Sign Company.
Huge amounts of people all over the country, whether they were painting one little sign painter little shop in some little town in a rural area, or whether it was a big shop in San Francisco. Thomas Swan Signs had 20, 30 people working in there. They had a whole floor of show card writers on their second floor. 12 guys doing show cards. It was a huge entry, employed a lot of people.
And so a lot of artisans gravitated to sign work and lettering. And in fact, this was probably one of half a dozen large shops that this city was able to support. And virtually every city in the country was able to support. Hundreds of lettering guys who could make a good living painting signs all day long and actually have a life.
Beverly at one time had 50 sign painters. Not 50 employees, 50 sign painters, plus the fabrication crews, the installation crews, the inside people, the outside people, the office staff. I mean, it was just, that boggles the mind.
I remember back in the day, you know, I was a tattooer, but all the tattooers were sign painters because of, you know, wintertime was slow, you know, and a lot of them was carnies, you know, so they would go to Florida and shit and paint corn dog stands and candy apple stands and fucking merry-go-rounds and all that kind of shit. We did the Home Depot stores, and they paid us a lot of money. They furnished everything. And we had to paint all the signs on the inside. The signs on the outside was these big, huge vinyl awnings, and we had to paint them with vinyl ink and bitches. I would go and cut the letters in, and my buddy Alan would go and roll the centers of them, you know. And they figured we was making too much money, you know, after we did like 8 or 10 stores, you know. So they offered us a job. They're like, we're opening up an art department. Y'all can be the head of the art department. And they were going to give us all these shares in Home Depot. And we're like, screw it, I ain't got time. I got too many cars to buy, too many motorcycles to build, too many drugs to do, you know, because this was like, we were still running crazy back then. All sign painters were drunk and crazy dudes back in them days.
My name's Roderick Treese, and I'm currently living in San Diego, California. I've been a sign painter since I don't do math very well, I started when I was 12. When I was on the road snapping, I was in Monterey, California, and I saw a florist shop that had this beautiful gold leaf sign on the window, and I called my dad that night, and I said, man, I just saw this gold leaf sign, and how do you do it? And he was describing the process, and I had no concept of what he was talking about. I likened it to when somebody described to me how you develop a black and white photographic print. When they're describing how the print evolves, going, how could that possibly, I don't get it. So when I finally figured it out and did it, you know, I immediately fell in love with it. And back then, somebody wanted a gold leaf window, you did it, but it was just another thing that you did. You know, it was part of the entourage.
Back in those days, all the lawyers and doctors had gold leaf signs. And every time that one of them died, you had to go put their name down in the deceased list and then re-alphabetize everybody else's name. So, there was a lot of gold leaf laying back then. Recently, they were doing a little thing in the student newspaper about me. They wanted to have a person say something about me. And my friend Eddie Wilson, that owns that Threadgill's place, he said to them, which was really good because he's good with words, he said, I don't know what I would have a description of his style, said Eddie Wilson, who owns Threadgill's and is a repeat Martin signed customer. I just think of it as Gary Martin. It is the combination of quality style and a retro sense that he didn't have to go back to. He brought it forward with him. It's like, which means I'm old, which I liked. I brought you here this one because of his Rock of Ages. That sign's getting kind of old, but I do all their work for them. I painted that one, but I didn't design. Well, I guess I kind of, yeah, it was like, that sign's from like found out in the field, and I remodeled it. They didn't like that man. They said he looked like he needs a haircut, and I said, I'm not changing it. It's like it was so hot this summer. It was 187 days in a row of over 100 degrees. The devil took over. I've noticed people taking pictures of that and selling them, Austin souvenir. I don't know if I could get any royalties out of it or not, but I basically do it all for me. And it'll work out for the other people if I like it. All original. I mean, I copied the style. There's, it's basically like a 1940s style. It's just a little bit fancier. I thought, well, if I really want to become like a real good sign painter, I'm going to have to go to a big city. I called up the union there and I said, what's the chance of like an apprentice type person getting a job in a sign shop there, union? And they said like 0. And I said, okay, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And so I went there and got a job right away in a big shop. So I just kept painting signs, and eventually it kind of, I'm not saying it paid off. I'm not rich or anything, but it's like, I think I made the right decision. Well, I did like that little sign. I thought it was nice, with a nice little terrier on it. That's about it.
The old sign kit, man. That's where all the good shit's at.
It's just the base color for everything.
I've been fascinated by colors and letters. Letters are really cosmic things because the whole universe is made out of them, really. Like, with those letters, you can make any name in the whole universe, I never get tired of it. It's like a meditation where I go into my own world, just pure attention, This is the best sales office I've had. I got all my order catalogs, my alphabet books. I got my tax records. I got my work orders. My new business policy, $250 minimum pay in advance because people are not paying their bills. It's driving me nuts. I can be really nice or really crazy. I'm trying to develop in between because how do you get your money when someone owes you money they won't pay you? I try to refrain from becoming antisocial, but here's our, this is my sign kit. There's about $1,000 worth of brushes right in here. These are the quills. These are sword stripers or dagger brushes. This is what they use on the cars. I'm not very good at this. They just run the perfect pinstripes like that down the thing. So this is what it's all about for me right here.
This is a liner. So you have a thinner. This is for doing lines, obviously. You got your truck brushes, a little bit bigger. It seemed to work very well on trucks and not very well other places. To badger hair, squirrel hair. It's kind of whatever you have on hand is what you use a lot of times. I was just doing art. I was doing some signs for some chicken coops and some garden signs and just different things. I was just trying to keep my hands busy, I guess. And just kind of need to figure out something to do that, to pay the bills.
Far from weak, so far from love. We tapped in the stone with the same ass, and lace ribbons and creeks. So you jump all out.
It's all right, I guess.
All about the window with stuff.
I started working with One Shot about 8 years ago, but there's the Ronin company, which makes a variety of oil-based, water-based, Japan colors. Then there's regular oil-based, regular latex. I mean, but I guess One Shot's the go-to paint for anything exterior, for myself anyway.
Traditional signs, you know, you mix colors, and there's a whole, you know, unlimited palette of colors in there. Now, the window splash, you don't want to mix colors because they get muddy. You have to use what manufacturers make. And there's basically about 5 basic colors that I use. Saturn yellow, arc yellow, yellow orange, which is almost a school bus color. And then there's blaze orange, which is a middle orange. Then there's rocket red. And then the blue that I used is fluorescent. It's called Horizon Blue. And then Aurora Pink. Now, Aurora Pink I don't use a lot of. A lot of people, I tell my students or anyone that asks, never use pink without asking the customer first. Some people don't like it. I'm Nick Barber. I paint temporary window signs all over Southern California. Have fun all the time. Other than talent scout for Spearmint Rhino and taste tester for Sara Lee, yeah, I think I got one of the best jobs around. It started out here in the late 60s. There was a guy from New York, drove cross country, did a few of them in Texas, then he got out here and he thought, let's paint temporary signs in watercolor that they can change every couple weeks. And it sort of evolved from there. Back when I started, I bought a bunch of these font catalogs and I would spend my time drawing them. And at first, I was doing just, you know, real Looney Tune cartoon lettering, and some of my customers weren't into it. They were not liking it. They wanted something a little more structural, a little more professional looking, and so I had to bite the bullet and learn that to survive. You know, I love mixing up the fonts. I love, you know, contrasting loose fonts against structural fonts, thick against thin. That's where you get your eye appeal.
Love your font. Well, I say thank you. I've designed many of them. Which one do you like best? No, I mean what you just wrote. I like the font you used. They are misappropriating the terminology, and they don't know better because all they have for reference is the font menu in the computer, and that is taken to mean lettering style. So I design type, and I also design lettering.
My name's Ken Barber, and I'm a letterer and type designer at House Industries. We would get these calls from people, and I remember it was a catalog that it said House Industries where custom type is king, I think. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but that's what it said. And we got a call, and someone said, yeah, I want that font that says where custom type is king. And we would have this conversation, and we still have conversations like this. Well, that's lettering. That's not a typeface. Oh, well, yeah, I want that. I said, well, okay, well, we can draw something for you. And, you know, we normally get, if they're calling us, we normally get a little bit of, you know, dead air time on the phone there, you know, before they, you know, tell us like, oh, well, that'll take too long or something like that. I just want a font. So we run into that. And we'd have to explain to people, well, you know, lettering is really a drawing of a letter or a group of letters. And it's just that single context. That's it. As opposed to a typeface where a typeface is a group of letter forms that work in a system, and the context is mutable, and it has to be designed with that in mind. The great thing about a piece of lettering is there's a warmth and an individuality to it.
When Ed and I teamed up in '76, and I said to Ed, I said, well, let's get our work next to our competitors to be. And one was a policeman, and the other was a car salesman. And these guys were masquerading as sign painters. And so I did a card sign, and this is what's left of the card sign. It was originally as big as this orange one behind it, but it had to be cut down for a display. And so I got my girlfriend at the time to place an order with these other two guys with the exact wording and size. Okay. Well, the first guy we got was the car salesman, and this is what he came up with. He got the size right, and that's about all. Nevertheless, this is single-stroke lettering, and he didn't spend a lot of time fussing with serifs like I did. This is an hour's worth of work, and our shop rate at the time was $15 an hour. So this is what you get for $15. He charged $12 for this. The policeman came up with this. I mean, you look at this character, you wonder, is that a poorly formed M or a poorly formed N? It's hard to tell. This guy...
well, not only that, but the smudge mark there.
He had to white out something that he misspelled. Why this is so large. The only thing that I can see that my example had in common with the one done by the policeman was he puts a curl on the W, and so did I. That is the extent of it. So he charged $10 for this. So you got 10, 12, or 15. And which one do you want for your money? Well, you decide. So we put these in our shop and explained that, yeah, okay, $15 at the time seemed like a pretty high shop rate. But you do get something that looks like a sign.
When I was a kid, I was helping my dad paint. And my mom comes up and she gave us a popsicle. Me and my dad a popsicle. Well, he was rolling and I had the paintbrush. I licked the paintbrush instead of the popsicle. That's how my paint days started.
Right around the corner from the top water fountain.
It's Jeff's lightweight paper here that's getting me. I'm used to using that heavy old brown paper.
I'm Norma Jean Maloney, and I'm in Austin, Texas. I think I know how I became a sign painter was when a fascination as a small child with typography, and my dad was in the Army, so we traveled around America quite a bit. I got to pick where we stayed based on the sign. Like Dad would say, "Where are we staying, Jean?" And I'm like, "I like the color TV part of that thing, just the colors and the type," and kind of sick, a little bit sick, but my friend's mom needed her storefront lettering redone, and she said, "Oh, well, you're good at art, maybe you could do this." And I had no idea what kind of paint to use or how these techniques were done, so I went to the craft store and got model airplane paint in those little bottles. And I'm out there struggling, I'm just going over the lettering that's already there, and I'm just making streak marks, and the paint's running down my arm, and I'm cussing, and I'm completely frustrated, and I'm like, how do these people do this? How do they do it where it's just opaque and smooth, and I suck, And this guy came up on his bicycle, and he had a beard, and he said, "Young lady, are you a sign painter?" And I was like, "No," and I never could be. There's no way. This is awful. This is horrible. I'm not enjoying this. And I was getting like $50, which was a huge amount of money for a 19-year-old, to have in your wallet. But I was there for 2 days before he showed up, trying to just do this simple little sign. He said, "I'll be right back." So he came back with one shot and a Lane nickel brush, and he got it all worked up for me. He said, "Try this." I was like, "Wow, this is incredible. This is amazing. Thank you." And he was just pedaling away. I'm like, "Thank you, stranger."
I feel like I meet a lot of people who, they'll say like, "Oh, my grandfather was a sign painter," because it used to be a much more common job than it is now. You're right, that's the way everything was done, and now it's unique, I don't know too many people my age that are doing it. My name's Jeff Canham. We're in San Francisco, California, my studio in the Sunset District. I'm 35 years old. started painting signs about 5 years ago and haven't stopped since. When I went to school, my focus was typography. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Graphic Design with an emphasis in typography. And at the time I went to school, it was an interesting time because they were still teaching all the traditional means of graphic design. You know, I learned how to do everything on a letterpress and learned how to cut and paste everything and was taught how to do everything on the computer. So I was really, lucky in that sense, and I really liked all the old methods and that kind of, I guess that's still apparent in the stuff I do now because I'm interested in old techniques and combining them with the new ones too. So when I moved to San Francisco, a friend of mine was opening up a new shop and went to New Bohemia Signs, and I went with him, loved what they were doing, and asked him about how to get involved, and they said, you could do an apprenticeship, and that's how it started. I guess I was more interested in learning the techniques and applying them to other things. I mean, I love just painting signs too, but there's, in my experience, not a whole lot of money in it. I don't know that I could really make a career just painting signs. So I think, for me, that's been one of the more interesting things, is learning how to do it all and then applying it to graphic design or fine art. It just worked out that I was there 5 years, so.
The original space that I was in was behind the Elixir Bar at 16th and Guerrero, and most of the space was taken up by 2 gigantic keg refrigerators. So I'm Damon Steyer, and I'm the proprietor of New Bohemia Signs, which is where we're at right now. The business was started in '93, and I think in the first 3 years, Steve Carbo, who founded it, says they were growing by doubling in size each year, and the place had built up a lot of goodwill and had a lot of beautiful signs. Basically, even once Steve and Eve had left for New Orleans, I came in June of '99 and looking for an apprenticeship. So I ended up, while I was still apprenticing as a sign painter, managing the shop up here. And basically I would come in and practice for about a half hour every day and then take photographs of the practices and snail mail them to New Orleans, where they would look at them and give me an idea about what it is I should practice this week. Basically what happened is by December, well, even before December of '99, they decided this just isn't working out. It's too much a hassle for them down in New Orleans to manage this thing. It's not making enough money. There just wasn't all that busy. So either help us close it down or we'll sell it to you. And so I scrambled resources and found a friend who was willing to loan me the pittance, really, that they were asking for it, and bought it from them. And then had to make like I was an expert sign painter with years of experience to every new customer that came in the door. With a lot of people, I'm not sure why it occurs to them to call us, because a lot of people call up and they just want to sign quick and cheap, and I don't know if something about our ad in the Yellow Pages in that particular edition stood out or what, but in fact I just heard Scott on the phone not 20 minutes ago saying something, everything we do is hand painted. It's like, maybe we'll send you to budget signs, or and it doesn't come to us. But there does seem to be some segment of the population that they want it to be hand painted, and they're delighted to found that somebody is still doing that.
So it'll flow on there a little bit better.
No, I didn't.
I'm gonna cut a little bit of water in here, I think. I'm gonna get this in on the table here. I don't want it to.
You want to? That's kind of what we're saying.
The Billy Reed is a bit polished and colored, but
Kind of got an angled cut on it, and so you can get in there and dab paint the corners and all that shit. But if you didn't have the angle on there, then you get a viscosity breakdown.
That's the best color.
town. These are reflective, so light's behind me.
I don't use a maul stick. I've always been what's called pinky down. When I was in sign school, you had to learn with everything, and then whatever was comfortable for you, that's what you would work with. And sometimes I'll use a maul stick if I'm working where it's wet and I need to shadow. But otherwise, I just go pinky down. When we're doing signs, we're making money for other people. And what I tell people when I'm selling them a sign is, you're going to make more money on this sign than I ever will. If my sign does the job that it's supposed to do, like a storefront or a truck letter, I mean, I've had signs out there for 20 years that the storefront, it might have been $700. Well, it's time to redo the sign. Well, you get more than your money out of that.
So I am Marjorie Garrison, and you're at my home in Echo Park, Los Angeles, California. My process varies really depending on who I'm working for, who the client is. I mean, maybe that's an obvious thing to say, but in some cases, I've totally taken the design process offsite, and it's something that I do on my own. I have always had a crush on graphic design, I would say. So I don't have a graphic design background, but I do think that the way that I come into projects and approach projects probably does, mirror graphic design in a way, because I think it is, sometimes someone has no idea what they want, they're really open-minded, they might have a color that turns them on, or the design might really be driven by the space that's available, and, I get to take something and really run with it. I think that I've stepped into a trade that is so established, and historically, you spend years apprenticing before you ever go on site for a job. So, the way that I've gotten into sign painting is somewhat accidental, but now very intentional. I think LA has a really interesting mix of sort of higher design, hand-painted work, but then so much incredible folk work that's just beautiful and full of character. And I feel like that kind of sign work, you can really get a sense of somebody's personality, and there's so much of that here in LA. Here's the thing about me as a sign painter. I have made certain things up on the fly, but I have also called every single sign painter in the book to ask them ridiculous questions. I mean, I've called and emailed John Downer. I've talked every time I'm in San Francisco. I stop in at Damon's place and pepper him with questions. And what's been amazing is that response. I mean, they're so willing to talk you through problem solving on a job, which has been great. There are so many tricks that would make sign painting easier. You pick that up by learning from, and working with people who have really done it for years, and I haven't had that opportunity yet, but I would love for that to happen at some point.
The public perception of what I do, that's always been a mystery to me, actually. So I don't know. I mean, my stuff's too wildly diverse to say there's a trend towards anything. And I kind of push everything to the comical, because it's a sign. It's not fine art. I don't really have to worry about that. It's just a sign. It's meant to convey information and be attractive, be decorative and informative at the same time.
I think probably as kids growing up, we all took for granted how much of a part he had in the urban landscape. And I don't think any of us were fully aware that that was attached to a person.
So we're approaching kind of a prime example of what me and Phil like to do, and would really taking the building and using the whole building as our surface. F. Scott Fitzgerald's granddaughter and great-granddaughter confirmed that it looked like him, so that was good. And so yeah, we just used an actual picture. We went to the Historical Society in right up the hill and had them print out a picture of him and his wife at the White Bear Yacht Club. So we used that religiously. That was just what we used all day long. It's always been a real challenge for me to be a sign painter. I'm not a natural talent. I don't have a natural hand, and I can't just pull the things out of my back pocket. I have to draft and design and ruminate over them.
But there isn't old-timers around anymore. I guess I'm an old-timer, and I don't consider myself really an old-timer. I didn't really start till I was like 26, 58 now. You know, I constantly learn stuff. I've been better as a letterer, you know, but I really enjoy getting outside, getting up on ladders and painting a building.
That's about 77 feet, I think, up. And
something like that.
Then it's about a 60-foot sign.
We had to drag all this heavy equipment up an elevator. That was a big deal. And we had to assemble it on the roof and then lower it.
And so that was made all with drafted pattern. So what we did was we took the photo, we made a copy of it, and then we projected it in the shop on the projection wall at the, like, we did a lot of trial and error in terms of, like, going the right distance without distorting the image. So it came to be about 44 inches that we could work in that wasn't distorted. So we just blew it up to scale with center lines and just really worked out the math and then blew it up. And so that's like something like 15, 20 patterns at 40 inches wide. Yeah. And just paper pattern with the pouncing wheel, and I'm sure you've seen it all before, but done just that way.
And once we got them up there, we're amazed at how little information it gave us.
Yeah, and then you pounce it, you really have nothing. And then two guys stand really close to each other and look at a photo together. One of the biggest differentiating factors of signs is that there is a wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
And art naturally can subject itself to abuse because there isn't necessarily a truth to art, because you're pursuing yourself and you're pursuing an exploration of your ego and yourself. There isn't really right or wrong. Signs, you're pursuing the ego of your client and the truth behind letter formation. So there is a right and a wrong.
And when you go paint on a building, you know, it's not like fine art. I mean, it's like you might want to do something extra to the building, but you realize there's a certain kind of limit. You know, you do it, and then you say, okay, stop, you know, and it's done. And don't hang out and work on it anymore. It's done. You know, it's just a sign. And
I just read this book called Sign Painters Don't Read Signs. And it's an autobiography by a sign painter from Portland, written in the late 1950s. And his perspective on sign painting is that it was completely permanent, that there was no topping the sign painter as a visual artist, and that the sign industry, the hand-painted sign industry, was here to stay. And his confidence is so heartbreaking to read, because he's just so proud of the industry that he's involved in. It's heartbreaking to read about.
I get a call from this young guy, and I'm talking to him on the phone, and I had quite a conversation with him. I get off the phone and I turn to this one of the other guys that was there, and I says, I don't know who this kid is, but he's going to be, if he's got any talent at all, he's going to be a sign painter. He's really going to be it, because he's got the fire in the belly. I mean, it's not like, geez, I'd like to be a sign painter. It's like, I got to be a sign painter. I have to do this. This is what I have to do. And so it was Mark Otis.
My name is Mark Otis.
Oh, I'm Rose Otis.
And we are here in our studio in Henderson, Nevada. This has been an adventure that has been unfolding for 30-odd years. We met at Jerry Albright's sign school. We're both, Rose was an apprentice, and I was a newly minted journeyman back in the late 70s when we got together.
I guess about the first year I was in school at Albright's, he had a Christmas party, and he used to invite sign shop owners and people who were working in the trade to come in and talk to the apprentices, and that's when I met Mark. But he had a lot to say.
In 2000, I think it was 2001, John invited us to a type design seminar that he was giving out in Denver, Colorado. And it was at the shop of a guy named Mark Otis. And Mark Otis is one of the original letterheads. And the letterheads were a bunch of guys who met like in the mid-70s.
We would just get together, usually in one of the shops of one of the guys that was self-employed, to talk about a lot of the stuff that we were really interested in as far as trends and designs, particularly old techniques that we would learn about in sign books was not being taught in the shops where we were working.
The old guys were a little bit guarded about their techniques and their process and everything like that. And these younger guys, they were really just hungry to learn. And what they did is they would meet and start to share some of these things that they were learning.
Like one night we would work on gold leaf, some other time we would bring in somebody that was really skilled on show cards.
They would dig through old books, they would try new techniques they haven't before. And so it was kind of, I don't know if you call it a renaissance exactly.
And then in 1972, Noel Weber, who had recently moved to Boise, held the first meeting outside of Denver. That meeting was attended by 70 or 80 people. Then a meeting in Oklahoma City that was hosted by Mike Jackson 6 months later had about 150, and then that began the modern movement. The name is Letterheads, and it was coined by Earl Vigil, who just happened to use that. The finer points of whether or not there was any link between anything else that people might have been doing recreationally at that time is lost to obscurity.
Okay, they're going to have a little letterheads meeting. So I'm there, and they're going through this. So I, kind of go off to the back of the room there. And Mark says, well, he says, we got some business now we got to take care of, like that. So I step back, get out of the way. This is their thing. And so Mark says, well, we got a new member that we got to initiate into the letterheads. So, and I absolutely didn't think it had anything to do with me. So they, next thing I know, they called on me and had me come up there, and I had to go through the oath and everything like that. And that I was the one that had inspired them to put this thing together. And they told me what the motto of the letterheads is. You do know the motto. Well, just about the time that you get to thinking that you found a cure for the common cold, I mean, you're really thinking you're pretty well hot stuff. And you remember the motto. It's IOAFS. It's only a fucking sign.
I think we're okay here for a minute. There's little holes in this paper. It's called pouch pattern. And there's, holy shit, I got a lot of chalk on there. There's holes in you can see the holes through the backside of the paper here. And then when you rub the charcoal over it, it just goes through there. What's the guy Hey, what's the guy that did all the stuff on the mural work on the ceiling? Michelangelo, yeah. Yeah, he did pulse patterns. Yeah, he draws shit out like this on paper and pounce it, but they had a little wheel with a, kind of like a little pizza cutter with spikes on, a little spur, and they had to poke holes in it, and then they just rubbed powdered charcoal over it, and at least that gave him some outlines, and then he lay on his back and wow, make it happen.
There was a guy that had a video. He's from California, named Mike Stevens. And a lot of people, including myself, tell people that are just going into the business, you got to get this, The Art of Hand Lettering by Mike Stevens. And he showed everything. And it was sometimes the way he talked or what you were reading would go over your head. A lot of big words. It's like, just show me how you did that. But at least he was somebody that started all this. And that was before a lot of us were using the word font. It was, oh, that's a Mike Stevens alphabet. I like that casual or this or that. And he set a whole precedence for it and really made something that we could go by. Otherwise, we had nothing to go by.
I started buying the Signcraft magazines and just looking at, you know, all of these amazing people. And Mike Stevens, who was a big show card artist, sign painter, I would say one of the best living sign painters that I got the opportunity to meet, was having a sign class in Lexington. And I'm like, oh my God, Mike Stevens coming to Lexington, I'm going to study with him, you know. And it was really expensive at the time. It was $700 and some, which when you're that young to come up with that kind of money. But a bunch of friends of mine banded together and got the money for me. And unfortunately, I'm getting ready to take this class with Mike, and I get there on the first day and there's no one else. Not one single other student. And, you know, he was so cute. He had coffee and donuts and little Lang nickels that weren't used lined up, and he was just devastated. I mean, visually devastated. And he said, I don't think I can have this class with just one student, you know. And I said, please, you know, please don't send me away. I mean, I've been looking forward to it for weeks. And he said, you know, I can see you got fire in your belly. You know, let's do this thing. His hand would just be like this. And as soon as that brush hit the surface, it was just like magic. Just, you know, I would just sit there and watch him and just be like, you know. So I was a student for 2 weeks with him, and he passed away. He had a heart attack.
First time I saw a computer was in '82 there in Moore, Oklahoma. Now, it was real basic, and it was real expensive, and didn't do much. And Mike Stevens was there. And Mike and I knew one another real well. He's the one that did the book Mastering Layout, The Art of Eye Appeal. And we used to fight all the time about, you know, terminology and stuff like that. But, you know, it was in the pursuit of knowledge. And he says, well, you know, the computer's going to put some of the mediocre sign painters out of work and like that. But he says, it isn't going to affect the good guys. And I said, well, I hope you're right, Mike. But I says, I doubt it. I says, the problem with technology is it never stands still. Next year, this machine's going to do 10 times things that it doesn't do now. And it's going to be cheaper. And the year after that, it's going to do 20 times as many things as it does now. And it's going to be cheaper. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened.
And I worked at a place called Darnell Advertising years and years and years ago, back in the 60s. And I remember in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, Dusty was telling me, he's like, the guy that owned the place was telling me, was like, one of these days there's going to be a prima donna motherfucker all y'all prima donna motherfuckers are going to get put out of business. Yeah, you're going to make something that's going to put y'all out of business, and that's what the fuck happened.
And we'd joke about the electric pencil, electric brush. It would have a wire out the end, and you have a brush, and it would just like paint. 2 years later, we started to see the first vinyl come out.
It was quite
quite an occasion. I know it was in White Plains, New York in September 1982. A company came out with a plotter that could actually cut out vinyl letters. They had this computer that would either pounce letters, cut out letters, had a pencil that could draw a pattern. So it was called the Sign Maker 3.
It's the very first sign, vinyl sign lettering cutout machine they had, and I don't ever hardly use it.
And we all kind of thought, where are they going to use this? You know, maybe they could use it in windows, because usually paint doesn't stick too good to windows on the outside. And I thought there was a lot of different things they could do with it. Well, as things progressed, more and more people bought these machines, and then more and more people were using them in different areas where we normally would paint. You know, on vehicles, on windows, and trucks, and just regular signs.
Now, in our industry, it's changed because we have people buy the software, no background, no design, no layout, no technique. They just go into business, and they've virtually decimated our whole industry as far as pricing and getting a decent living, because they charge too cheap. They do shoddy work. And in a general sense, it's just part of our culture. Our culture is being dumbed down on every level, aesthetically especially.
Well, that was a true nightmare when that movement came, where all of those little franchise things opened up. Any area that those guys came into just wiped out little guys that were doing really neat work, but it just wiped them out because, oh, well, we've just got to go down to the corner to the little strip mall and get these guys to do it. And none of these guys had any background in the sign-making world at all. No background in design, nothing. It's just, you can cut out these many letters out of this many square feet of vinyl and make this much money, and that's what motivated them. And it almost wiped out the whole industry.
People just kind of come to expect, if they order a sign now, that they're going to be able to get it overnight. And sometimes it's hard to explain. Well, gee, you have drying time. You can't, if it's hand done, it's not going to be instant.
I got a feeling 10 years from now, something that's produced today, a car, something that somebody wrapped, it's going to be gone. You're never going to see the history of what was produced in 2011. I can go still see the history that was produced in 1960 because somewhere there's a truck or somewhere there's a sign on a wall that's still there, And that's the part about it that is really sad.
It's all about the bottom line and no longer about the quality of life, the good things, the right things. It's always about the fast things, the cheap things, and certainly our industry has been impacted by that.
But how many people dropped down the brush and got a machine is astounding to me. I mean, hundreds of sign painters just threw in the towel, like had been lettering signs for years and said, well, we got this plotter and it's faster and there's more money in it and might as well. How do you walk away from your craft like that, I can't wrap my brain around it at all.
Everything's disposable now. I never thought that I would stop painting signs. I never thought about they would make, a computer would come out and punch out these vinyl letters. I mean, it still can't do as pretty a stuff as you can by hand. But still, they put a lot of people out of business. But the world's changed, totally changed. I'm glad I'm on the backside, I got the good end of the stick, Just these little young kids now, it's got ones that's gonna have it tough. Back in the day, hell, you could get in a pile and do whatever you wanted to do. Can't do any of that stuff no more, So.
I think that every human being has the capability of altering their environment for the better with their bare hands. For the past 10 years, I have done nothing but market myself as an artist, market myself as a sign painter. At first, I knew I had a very long road before me, and I still do. I don't have anyone to teach me how to do this. I'm gonna have to do this old school. I'm gonna have to hustle it like a salesman. and just fake it. And I totally, to some degree, am still faking it because I haven't had any formal training. But all of those places I started working for 10 years ago, and I went in there and I said, I am a sign painter. I can paint your sign. And I had no idea how to do it, but I figured it out along the way, and and it worked, so. And I've gotten to this somewhat comfortable position where it's not hard for me to make rent. It's not hard for me to pay bills or buy a new truck or, you know, take care of myself. But it's really hand to mouth, and it's easy for me to go round up a couple $1,000s if I need it in a month. And that feels good, but at the same time, it's not secure. I still know that I need a backup plan, that I'm not going to be able to do this forever, that I'm not going to be able to retire on this.
I'm Paul Lindahl, co-founder of Colossal Media.
I'm Adrian Moeller, co-founder of Colossal Media.
We're an all hand paint outdoor advertising company.
This is our shop in Brooklyn, New York.
Training somebody to learn how to do this really takes about, 5 to 7 years to get somebody from the point of walking in the door and not knowing anything to knowing all the stuff in between and being able to, execute any project.
The sign is, I think, 50 feet, maybe a little taller, and then the wall is probably 70 feet. This guy's a sign painter.
A common misconception that we have a lot is that, I'm a good artist, I could be good at that. They look up at the walls and they see that, oh, that's a great painting, I'm a great painter, I would be a good match, but they're not considering all the things that lead up to that final product that are so important.
All these guys call me the ox because I like to fucking pull the shit up. We're setting up like our climbing cables that we raise up and down the building on. And what we're doing back here are parapet clamps, which are secondary safety line supports. Painting, too much rain is when the water is dripping down the wall. And rigging, I guess tsunami would be too much water.
You can't just get people in here that are going to slug through stuff because we've spent so much time trying to establish ourselves as like a hands down, excellent company to work with. You put all that stuff on the line every time you show up to work, and we need to feel confident that the people that are out there, are going to town for the sake of themselves and the sake of the company and the sake of the people that are around them, It's a pretty big undertaking at the end of the day. It's more than just a job, for sure. A cool part about it, about being a painter, is that you can always grow as a painter, you can always get better as a painter. We get a lot of appreciation from the public about keeping something like this going, and more and more people are like, oh, that's Colossal, we see your stuff everywhere, we love what you guys do, good job, way to keep this, this thing going. There is that, romance. There's not a whole lot of room for it because we got to get stuff done,
My name's Stephen Powers. I am a sign painter. I am an artist. Sign painters are subjected to their clientele, where they're supposed to paint, how they're supposed to paint. I've reversed that trend a little bit by being my own client. I work from the point of view of a sign painter would. Certain techniques and certain ways of painting that I think are right and correct are because sign painters did it first, and sign painters showed me those rules and those ways over 100 years of the sign painting tradition that I'm looking at and learning from. A Love Letter for You was a project where I kind of meshed the elements of sign painting, wall painting, and ultimately graffiti. And I made a very adult version of what graffiti is to me and always has been to me. And that is a vehicle for projecting larger ideas. I understand design and I understand fine art, but when it comes to painting signs in a design or a fine art context, the sign writer is the ultimate judge of what's right. Not the designer, not the, you know, $1 million graphic specialist or the architect. It's the guy ultimately with the brush that's looking at the wall or looking at the sign that I think, in my world, has ultimate authority. It works best when you let the sign painter do his or her job and paint the sign.
I'm Sean Starr. I own Starr Studios. One huge project this summer was for the Gap, the jeans, company, and that to me was very intriguing to try and understand why they wanted to bring in hand-painted signs. And from the conversations I had there, they're trying to go back to the passion and roots that launched them in 1969. And instead of just the corporate, polished, plasticky kind of stuff that everyone else is doing, they're trying to reignite the passion that got them started. And that's what they're trying to reestablish now, is bringing in, craftsmen on every level. We've gone through so many years in this country where everything's become so homogenized and strip malls and just everything's watered down that a lot of companies have lost sight that it is that old passion that got them started and got them successful in the first place. So that for us is very exciting because we see the potential of, being able to do what we do and that spreading to, sign painters in other cities, which I find exciting just if nothing else for the cultural aspect of this country that has been so washed out for so long now.
Well, part of what's going wrong with us is a lot of guys getting older or quitting, or we got a whole new generation of project managers and executives in these companies. They came up with a computer. They don't even know that you can have a wall sign. That's why you're seeing these horrible plastic banners advertising quality companies. You go, oh, that looks like a fly-by-night. Why don't they do a real wall job? So I'm thinking it's up to me to go around, talk to these people, say, look, here's what we can do for you. I go out, I say, hey, good to meet you. Let's see now. And then I study the buildings on either side and the color. And I see, well, who's going to see this sign? What angle are they going to come from on the street at? How many miles an hour? So I'm really trying to serve the client, because half the time they design something on a screen, you put it up, it just doesn't get it,
Vinyl is the new way, but it's not painting. And when I get to paint a building, it is a little bit of a victory over vinyl. Victory over vinyl. I should. That's a good name for a sign shop.
What's the first thing a sign does when it gets old?
Fades.
It fades. I'm really going to take some paint off. dark there. That's about right. Now, we haven't done any painting techniques at all. All we've done is scrape. What do you think? It looks aged already. We have 4 levels, and beginning to advanced, I teach all 4 levels in the same room at the same time. These are beginning students. We're 5 weeks into the 16-week semester. They've already learned how to draw the letters with a pencil, just regular block standard letters, and now they're learning to handle a brush. If you see the charts, they're making vertical strokes, horizontal strokes, and diagonal strokes. They're bored out of their skulls, but it's a challenge, and they're improving every day. Once we get the basic strokes down, in a week and a half, we'll start forming the letters. Because we teach exact lettering science. So it's not just a guess. The letters have to be almost perfect. And there is always a demand for handcrafted whatever. I don't care what it is. There's always a demand. Someone wants, I don't want it done by a computer or machine. I don't want the shortcut. I want it done the right way. I want it done the real way. I used to get people coming to my shop and they say, can you do something besides those stick-on things? I don't want stick-on letters. And I said, you mean painting? And they say, yeah, painting. Like they never heard of what that was before. Sign painting. I say, yeah, we still do that here. So every time I turn out the real deal, one of these students will go out there, yeah, I'm glad, because they're going to keep this craft alive and they're going to keep it going.
I think it's refreshing to see, especially young people, interested in sign painting, for example, and focusing on this, this one craft and educating themselves.
There's still now a place for brush where, like you said, in the 80s and early 90s, it was kind of going away. And it's like, well, nobody cares about it anymore. Well, they do. And it's showing up now.
I just got a call here 2-3 days ago from a real good friend of mine. He told me that there's a major company in the United States that wants to have all their sign work done by hand with paint.
If you follow every known law in the sign game, you will be a master sign painter, or you will at least do a sign that works. That's correct.
I mean, you can be rolling in signs every day for 5 months and then have 3 months where there's nothing. And you got to be a certain kind of person to do that. But I think the thing my kids have really gotten is that not so much what I'm doing, but why I'm doing it. Like, if you love something, I just try to tell them, if you love something, you're going to be good at it, you're going to be successful.
So that's why I just paint signs, but I'm not interested in making a lot of money.
It's the coolest thing I've ever come across, and I'm not going to just kick it to the curb.
At some point, there's got to be a backlash against all this computer cut, as cheap as you can get it, work. There's got to be a renaissance of appreciation of hand-done stuff. There was a bumper sticker on this one car that said, "Drum machines have no soul." And it made a good point.
I felt like this story had to be told. It's an epitaph for a whole aesthetic and an artistic vision that is disappearing as we speak. And the human spirit is the worse for that.
Old signs become art. They become wall art. They're cool. They fade and all this. And, vinyl will never become, because it shrinks and it gets dirty on the edges and then cracks and it looks like hell. And then you just want to throw it away. So I want to make signs that turn into art.
There's certain jobs that you need to approach with the 17th century technology. And that's what we are, we're guys that use the old technology in a new way. And it's a wonderful thing because it's human.
When I was sitting there, and it didn't make any difference if I was doing a 4x8 or doing an aluminum blank or lettering a couple doors on a truck or what it was just, I was in my element. You know, this was it. I was contented just to feel that brush and just a little bit of drag on the paint, you know, and the way it. And you'd get that brush, and you'd mastered that brush. You could make that brush do anything that you wanted to. I mean, that's power. It's real power.
I'm gonna tell